This afternoon, Scarlett Johansson's legal team announced that they were suing the Walt Disney Company in California State Court for a breach of contract regarding the Black Widow release on Disney Plus day and date with theaters. Well, just in the last hour, the Walt Disney Company has finally given a response to this. We're going to cover that in a minute, but we're also going to cover two of the stories that came before this that I think tied in, because I've said before, it's not just about the stories, it's about the timing of their release. Stay tuned. We're about to get into this here on Valiant Renegade. Renegade Online. So good evening, folks. I'm glad you're here with me. Before we get into this, we have quite a bit to cover. Please do watch to the end of the video. There's a lot of information and ground to cover here, and I know some folks out there don't watch these videos all the way to the end, but I encourage you to please stick around. I'm hoping to impart some good information to you and that you enjoy it. And on that note, thank you for watching today. And if you do enjoy the video, please share it out. Please hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Have that notification bell turned on so you can get these stories immediately posted in notifications as soon as we drop them to you. So, on with the show. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Black Widow and the box office performance, or the lack thereof, that it had, and had a little bit of head scratching going on, especially when we saw some of those Disney Plus Premier Access numbers, which were staggering. Samba TV quite well confirmed many of them, it seemed. So Disney did fairly well with it. But as is the case with many of these movies, a lot of contracts for these kind of movies are tied to box office production in terms of bonuses, not only to production companies, but also to the actors involved. And about a week ago, this article came out from the Business Insider, detailing some issues between Bob Iger and Bob Chapek, the incoming and outgoing CEOs of Disney. There was, let's call it, a bit of a civil war going on. I think we've used that term before in relation to Disney and to Lucasfilm. And it's tied into this as well. But it's amazing that about a week ago, this article came out. And then today we got the news we did from ScarJo. Let's look at this. So I didn't cover this before, and this is part of the trials and tribulations of not being a full-time YouTuber. I didn't see this when it initially came out. I did capture it about 3 or 4 days ago. I managed to see it and read it and started wondering on this. And I said, I wonder if there's going to be a follow-up story to this one way or another, because this seems like a setup. Well, I think we got that answer today. So let's look at this. So the story basically details some 4 anonymous sources that talk to the Business Insider, which is a very big business and financial trade publication. This is not small potatoes here, folks. The Business Insider is pretty much up there with Forbes and that kind of stuff. So this is not to be taken lightly. Chapek succeeded Iger in February of 2020 and became the company's 7th chief executive, but his experience is limited to the parks and consumer products. Iger's previous heir apparent, Tom Staggs, also came from the parks division, but he left the company in 2016 before he was going to succeed Iger. So let's take a step back for a minute. Just for everybody's memory, is that Iger was set to leave in early 2020. In fact, at the end of 2019, into January 2020, and then Chapek would take over as CEO, which effectively did happen, but at the same time effectively didn't. Because we had this little thing happen around March of that year, and lo and behold, the parks were shut down and a lot of things changed in this country for over a year. And at that point, it was determined by Bob Iger, the board, and probably a lot of the senior stockholders that it would be best to have the old dog stick around for a little while longer to help navigate the Walt Disney Company through what we were going on. Not altogether a bad idea. Nothing that I disagreed with, because, hey, it makes a lot of sense. When you hit a rough patch like that, you don't want to change the horse in the middle of the race. Of course, this was a race that nobody saw coming. Nobody expected this. But here we were. So Iger stayed on. So this article talked a lot about some of the internal strife between Chapek, the new CEO, who wanted to come in, put his own stamp on the company, do things his own way, take the company in a direction that he wanted to take it in. Again, not uncommon. Not uncommon for a new CEO like that to come in with their own ideas. The problem was, at this point, of course, when the old guy's still hanging around and he's still technically your boss, because at that point, Iger was the executive chairman of the board, He outranks Iger outranks Chapek in that case. So that became an issue. Quote, when Bob Iger inserted himself back into the company, it was a huge slap in the face. The concern was that Bob Chapek could not handle it, the senior studio executive said. Now, this was a senior studio executive who didn't go on the record. This was from another studio talking about this. But I have a feeling one of these four sources might have come from somewhere else, and we probably learned that today. A cinema industry executive familiar with the thinking at Disney said Iger was frustrated that Chapek might have harmed the company's carefully cultivated relationships in the all-important China market with its Black Widow release strategy. Oh, so specifically, a lot of the strife, and of course this is not the only thing, I'm sure, but a lot of the strife obviously being discussed here is about Black Widow. And this article came out 1 week ago. Let's continue. Disney's choice of a July 9th release for the latest Marvel movie internationally bumped into China's month-long celebrations of the CCP's 100th anniversary. Oh, well, God bless their hearts. The cinema industry executive noted that China had yet to give a release date for Black Widow and Shang-Chi and the Eternals. Need we go on? Starting to see the problems here, huh? Marvel was also displeased. Marvel Studios. Marvel, that means Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige, Disney's golden boy, was also displeased with the decision to simultaneously release Black Widow in theaters and on streaming. Two sources close to the company said. One said the view at Marvel was that the premium video on demand decision caused piracy issues and hurt the box office performance. Well, we know for a fact, we have measured this, that Black Widow, and I say we, I mean the news, not me personally, but the news at large, we have these articles, it is confirmed, Black Widow is the single most, by far and away, pirated movie of this year. Absolutely. So there's no question. They pull these numbers from Torrent, a website that's notorious for piracy, for file sharing. Piracy is theft at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how big or how small you think the company you're stealing from, you're freaking stealing. It's not a good thing. And it's no surprise that this happened with this day and date release stuff. And guess what? It's not just Disney suffering this. It's guys like HBO Max too, Warner Brothers, that do this day and date release stuff. They're all having these problems, but Black Widow, by far and away, the most pirated thing of 2021. The debut of Black Widow was viewed as successful. $80 million in North America, $60 million in streaming revenue, but the film nosedived in its second week. What happened in that second week? It also was confirmed by the National Association of Theater Owners, who issued a strong rebuke, which we covered here on Valiant Renegade a couple of videos ago. A strong rebuke of Disney for doing the day and date release, because not only was it hurting the theaters, it was also hurting Disney itself. And one of the reasons they cited for sure was piracy. And it wasn't long after that we got confirmation on the piracy numbers of Black Widow. The questionable part is the content side of the business, which was Bob Iger's strength. I don't know how much of a learning curve he still needs, meaning Chapek. He has been open to experimentation, though. The Black Widow release strategy was a big one, missing the whole China window. And what they're talking about is, as Chapek came from the parks and the parks and merchandising side, Iger was more in tune with the studio and production side. So this was where part of the conflict between the two Bobs came in as well. The analyst Rich Greenfield, a partner at Lightshed Partners, meanwhile believes Bob Chapek was right to release Black Widow on streaming on the same time as theaters, since movie lovers are not returning to the theaters in great numbers. Quote, simply relying on movie theaters isn't going to work in the future. Rich, all due respect, I totally disagree. And movies like A Quiet Place Part 2 pretty much said no to that. That is not correct. When A Quiet Place Part 2 basically outgrossed or matched the grosses of the first iteration of that movie 3 years ago before all this started, that suggests to me that that entire audience showed back up. I don't know about you, but math is a stubborn thing. Not every movie is going to do that, But if you put good movies out there, yes, people are willing to return to the theaters. And of course, there's no way to know since we have day and date releases on everything except for a few movies like A Quiet Place Part 2. Some of Iger's closest lieutenants, the public relations conciliary, Zina Mucha, and the general counsel, Alan Braverman, are hitting the exits. And Alan Braverman's the guy you can hear usually introducing the investor calls, every quarterly report that comes out of Disney if you listen to those things. And that's not uncommon either that we see the guys like this. They will hit the exits when the big man goes, and they've been together for 15, 20 years. Nothing to really freak out about. It's really kind of normal. But Disney declined to comment on this. Emails to Iger and Chapek were not immediately returned. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So the big thing here was talking about Black Widow missing the China window, blowing money that they should have earned otherwise by not going day and date. Kevin Feige, when they say Marvel Studios, that means Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige was pissed that this movie went on Disney Plus day and date. Well, apparently somebody else was too. And that somebody, of course, as we all know by now, ScarJo. And just before I started cutting this video, you can see the timestamp on this, 5:44 p.m. It's not even an hour ago at this point where I am. Disney finally responded. Scarlett Johansson launched a lawsuit in California State Court against the Walt Disney Company, breach of contract, believe for about $50 million, because not only do a lot of movie studios are incentivized by box office performance, but a lot of time the actors are too. I think we all know the stories about Robert Downey Jr. at this point. Robert Downey Jr. I think made something ridiculous like $100 million plus, maybe more than that, on Avengers Endgame alone, because he had ties to those box office receipts. The average Marvel Cinematic Universe movie has had on an average of about $1 billion global box office revenue. If Scarlett Johansson's contract was for 5% of the grosses, then that's the $50 million. I see where that number's coming from. But at the time, Disney had no comment. Disney could not be reached for comment. No surprise. They don't want to talk about it until they confer with their attorneys. And this lawsuit was filed this morning, 1 week after the article we just spoke about, with all the complaints, the internal strife. Obviously, Kevin Feige wasn't happy. Part of me wonders, obviously one of Feige's people, Feige himself by proxy, let's put it this way. I think Kevin Feige himself by proxy was probably one of the sources in that Business Insider article. My opinion. And another one of the four sources, I promise you, at this point, I bet, was ScarJo, or by proxy, her attorneys. Because I don't think it's an accident that article came out 1 week ago, and then today we got the ScarJo stuff. That was a setup. The Business Insider article was a setup to let everybody know that there's stuff going on. Not everybody was on board with this. That Marvel, specifically Marvel Studios, was not on board with the day and date release on Premier Access or Disney Plus. And now here's ScarJo's lawsuit. So all the ducks were being put in a row. And people ask, well, why didn't she sue before once they announced it would be on Disney Plus? Well, that's not how lawsuits work. You have to, you can't file a lawsuit for damages that have not happened yet. Now that the movie has been released, now that we have box office receipts, we can see what the movie did. Now we can go claim damages. That's how the legal world works. Okay? So that's why it's coming out now. So Scarlett Johansson, star of Marvel superhero movie Black Widow, sued the Walt Disney Company on Thursday. And I'm sorry, this is from Reuters. As you can see, this is coming through my Apple News feed. Disney said there was, quote, no merit to the lawsuit, saying that it had complied with her contract. It added in a statement that the release of the movie on its streaming platform had, quote, significantly enhanced her ability to earn additional compensation on top of the $20 million she has received to date. So just for your own edification, most of these contracts, just like if it was Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Pratt or any of these other guys, they get a certain amount of guarantee. So obviously ScarJo's guarantee was $20 million for this movie, with a box office back end. So the first $20 million was guaranteed. If the box office receipts at a 5% rate exceeded that. And again, this is my speculation. I'm giving you a 30,000 foot view of how these contracts often work. 5%. So if the movie had only done $400 million of global box, well, she already got her 20 million, right? So she hit that 20 million. 5% of 400, 20. But if it went to $1 billion, they'd owe her an extra 30 or more. Or the 5% could have been on top the 20 million. There's that too. Don't know exactly, but I'll put it this way. As this is now in a public court of law, we're going to see, once discovery is done, we're going to see very clearly as she files, and it's probably in the details of the lawsuit, exactly what her contract stipulated. But I'm going to read you this because I about fell out of my chair. And this is the kicker. Johansson's lawsuit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court claims that Disney wanted to steer audiences toward Disney Plus, quote, where it could keep the revenues for itself while simultaneously growing the Disney Plus subscriber base, a proven way to boost Disney's stock price. Second, Disney wanted to substantially devalue Ms. Johansson's agreement and thereby enrich itself, the lawsuit said. The suit seeks unspecified damages to be determined at trial. I'm betting it's going to be somewhere in the 30 to 50 million range. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. That's what they're going to seek. And then we're going to go down here, and this is going to be it because this is amazing. And they do bring this up about AT&T and Warner Media. Now, we talked about this in my last or second to last video. Warner Media did it right. They went day and date. Now, Warner Media also had most of their own movies are produced like Disney in-house. They are both the production studio and the distributor, okay? They stroked a check to Legendary Pictures, who did 2 of their movies this year. So Legendary was a studio that's not part of Warner Brothers that produced Godzilla vs. Kong and Dune. Okay? Godzilla vs. Kong, Warner Media turned around and stroked a check to Legendary for, we know it was at least $225 million, according to articles that have come out since then. Dune is probably going to be at least that, if not more. And Dune is still slated right now to be released day and date on HBO Max, which I think is still a huge mistake, on October 22nd. But Warner Brothers is making restitutions to those studios for that. They've come to an agreement. They've renegotiated the contract is the bottom line. Disney didn't have to do that with any outside production studios, but they do have actors in there that have their contracts, their compensation tied to box office receipts. But if you read this right here, the outcome could have broad ramifications in Hollywood as media companies try to build their streaming services offered by premium programming to lure subscribers. The Disney statement, this is from their actual statement, said the lawsuit was, quote, especially sad and distressing in its callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of that thing that I can't say on YouTube. Disney's defense, they actually bring this up, is why Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit is so callous, because I don't even know what to say to this. This is beyond stupid. It's beyond stupid, Disney, and it's ridiculous. This is just, let's use some buzzwords out there to play on people that are emotionally shallow, I guess, and won't look through this for what it is, a giant pile of crap on your part. You violated ScarJo's contract, I'm sure. I don't know that 100%, but if I was a betting man, I'd bet odds on that. And now you're trying to get out of it. It's just shame on you. Shame on you. So Disney's got issues. They're going to have to fix this. They're going to have to address this. Obviously, like I said, that article from Business Insider last week was a primer for something. Well, that other shoe dropped today. Thanks for being here. Make sure you're liked, subscribed, share the video out, turn on the notification bells on this channel, and do leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Quite a hell of a ride on these stories. And until next time, thank you for being here. Take care.